Hi, I am here with Matta Sorcier, creator and a self-taught writer and artist of Sacrimony and the Misadventures of Buddy and Friends. Um, Hi.
Hello.
I'm just pulling up your campaign page here. The campaign for Sacrimony 1 through 7 is live on Kickstarter right now. And I'll include the link to the show notes. Is there anything that you want to kind of start us off with a little intro into the comic?
Oh yeah. Sacrimony is the story of a girl who died, but then she got better.
I love
And as with
that.
all mysterious resurrection stories, there's a catch. The catch is that she has no memory of her past, no idea why she has magical powers, or why she has demon wings that she now has to hide from society. It kind of feels like Saga, but if it wasn't in space and if the parents hated each other.
Nice. I like it.
Thank you.
Um, and yeah, that's one of the things that I think is so interesting just as a writer is to have a main character who kind of doesn't know anything about herself. Is it hard? Because you always try to, think through a character's emotional arc and kind of their past and where they're at emotionally and how it informs how they kind of go through the events of the story. But what's it been like to kind of develop a character who doesn't have any of that?
It feels a lot like kind of like growing up all over again. Like when you're like a kid and you don't know anything and you're just asking all of these questions, and like sometimes people don't want to give you a straight answer. So that's kind of like what I mirrored with Kashad, the main character, where, she has no idea who she is, where she's from, but she also has no idea about anything in the world at all. She's like a complete blank slate because she's been so sheltered her whole life. She hasn't like interacted with anybody. She has like no social skills. And it's fun to explore that, but I think also having her as a blank slate is a great way for the reader to learn about the world because as she is asking questions and learning more things about this like incredibly vast, crazy, built from scratch bonkers world that I built, like people get to learn along with her. So it feels more organic instead of me just like, having a character just info dump a whole bunch of things and then the reader never retains it. Like as a reader, I hate info dumping, so I always try to avoid the things that I hate in my stories.
Same.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just having her with no memory, no nothing, just it works so well for bringing people into the world and having them like experience it through her eyes.
That's a really cool point. And that was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about too. You have so much cool world building, and kind of how do you approach that? And it's really interesting that you kind of you have this character who is learning all of it with the reader. Um, so you don't have to kind of find like ways to introduce it in conversation that can feel a little forced or like whatever it is. Like she's learning it too. That's really cool.
And I think it also, in a way, probably makes the reader feel a little more attached to her and what she's going through, because you're all just bonding through trauma at this point,
Yeah.
which makes strong bonds, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I like it. Um, so this is issue 7. How has her, without too many spoilers for people who haven't kept up with the series so far, where is she kind of at in her story in this issue?
Oh my God. Issue 7 is gonna be like an interesting ride because like it's not a super duper spoiler that like her mom is out at work, so she just like runs away from home because she's just like, I want to go see the world. Like, there's this big festival that's going on that her mom specifically told her not to go to because it's like you can guess like the reasons why she would tell her not to go to the festival because it's like a religious festival, and Kajat has demon wings, so two and two equals six or whatever. But yeah, so she's just like, oh, I don't have to listen to my mom. I'm gonna run away from home. I'm gonna go to this festival, and then she starts learning what the world is actually like outside of the little apartment that she's been trapped in for a few months. She starts learning how people would react if they found out how she actually looked, because she wears a big cloak to cover up her wings.
Mhm.
But then, she starts finding out that, the world might not be that great to her. And it's kind of like, it's really traumatizing. And it sucks because people are like, oh my God, you sadist, why are you putting your characters through these things? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know why I do it, but it's entertaining. Leave me alone.
I know, I feel that way too with my characters. Like you have to put them through stuff, but you kind of feel a little guilty when you do it too.
Yeah, and it's like if you don't put them through stuff, then the audience is like, "Oh, this story
It's
is boring." Yeah, like, "Oh, everyone gets everything they want." But like, isn't that what you wanted? You told me that I'm a sadist and that I hate my character. Like, you can't win.
I
But
can't win.
at least you can lose in the most interesting way possible.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like that should be on some kind of bumper sticker.
Or yeah, just like a writing manual. Like just like there's no winning or losing, just lose in the most interesting way. And that's like the entire manual. And then the rest of it is a blank book where you just write your own story and entertain yourself.
Exactly. Um, and yeah, that was one of the other things that I like about this story too that you kind of touched on is how people react to people who have wings. Um, and just the way that that's like one of the things that I like about fantasy and genre fiction and in general sci-fi is how it really can be used as kind of an allegory for stuff going on in the real world. Um, and how did you, I guess, how did you kind of approach that? And what do you see that the role of that kind of in these characters and in her story and the world building?
I mean, it probably goes back to childhood where I kind of developed a weird fascination with like bad people because I like my family, they're immigrants from the Caribbean, so you know, they came here. I was born here, but like they had that sort of xenophobic mentality of like, oh, well, like anybody who doesn't look like us is automatically bad. You can't be friends with anybody that doesn't look like us.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the schools that I went to, they were predominantly like Black and Latinx and stuff. And my parents were like very against that. They're just like, no, don't talk to these people. They're bad people. And I'm like, but these people are cool. They're like some of my best friends. I don't understand like what's so bad about them.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I was thinking about a character like Kajad, it was like, you know, that's like the kind of kid that I would have been friends with that my parents would have disapproved of. And then also like later on, just, you know, going out in the world and kind of feeling like an outsider a lot of the time, especially after 9/11. Like I got a lot of dirty looks from people for like no reason. Just like yeah, there would be people who would like come onto the train cart and like look at me and then decide that they wanted to just sit in another train cart. Like, what am I gonna blow up the train? Like, I just want to go to school. Leave me alone. Like, so, you know, for on
That's
one
like that age to have to go through something like that.
yeah,
Any age,
it's
but especially at that young age.
yeah, it's so like stupid and unnecessary, like people's level of paranoia. So like my inspiration for Kajad came from both sides of the table where it was just like, you know, I see someone who someone tells me looks bad and they're not bad. And then, you know, people are telling me that I look bad and like I'm not bad. So it's
Yeah.
like that's kind of the theme I think for a lot of the characters in Sacrimony where it's just like they don't necessarily fit into the role that like you would expect them to. Like they're not very good at their jobs or like you know, they're just like square pegs in round holes.
Mhm. I like that because I feel like there is this like this tendency to just buy into these kind of caricatures of how you expect people to be. Like someone like this is like this, and someone like this is like that, and people just buy into that without really thinking.
Yeah, there's not even the possibility for like an exception here where it's like, okay, you know, like someone is telling me this person's like that. Maybe I should, you know, keep an open mind and talk to them myself and see what they're really about instead of just making like blanket assumptions.
Yeah, yeah, seeing people as full people and not just
What a wild concept, right?
bananas.
Absolutely bonkers. That sounds fake.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's really cool that you have these characters that are kind of specifically going against some of those like caricatures that you would think they would fit into if you buy into that.
Yeah, I enjoy handling things like that and even like, you know, social problems and stuff, there's like a lot of things that come up in Sacrimony that kind of mirrors the way that things are right now. And I try to do it without this like, you know, heavy-handed agenda or whatever people are, where it's just like, you know, there's stuff going on in the background. It affects the characters somewhat, but there's never that heavy-handedness of like, that's bad. People who do this are really bad. You know, there's like a million examples out there of like how not to do that. But yeah. it's so strange because it's like, this big like crazy fantasy world. There's like gods that interact with mortals and stuff, but like the problems that everyone faces are still really human, and it's a lot of fun to write that way. I think it's the way I write best.
Yeah, I like that too. Kind of just making that kind of the center of what you're writing about is these human issues. Like I'm reading Tilly Walden's On a Sunbeam, um, and I was thinking about that even just this morning. Actually, I was thinking about how she kind of does that with her writing. Like it's this big sci-fi world that she has this story set in, but it's so driven by really like the inner world of her main character. Um,
Oh, I
yeah,
gotta look into that. Let me write that
it's
down.
very good. um, and I read Clementine also by her, and she kind of does the same thing. Like it's this whole Walking Dead dystopian world, but it's this like story that's so driven by emotion and the human stuff. And she's very good at that. And I really like it when writers can do that. When it's you might have this whole huge kind of exciting world with all of this stuff happening, but at the heart of it is the emotional life of the characters.
Yeah, those are the stories I end up liking the most too, where it's more character driven. It's about what they're facing. It's not necessarily that whole like, all right, well, we have to like punch the bad guy and save the
Yeah.
world. It's more of like, people versus some sort of like systemic problem or like
Mhm.
something that like one person can't necessarily fix, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm.
And yeah, things like that I feel more attached to. I feel like I relate to them better. It feels more real to me.
Yeah. I think so too. Because it feels more human.
Yes.
Um, and not that like big action stories and things can't be fun, but I think like even those work best when they're able to focus on kind of the human angle of it.
Yeah, when there's like, some actual like human dilemma or, someone wants to live their life a certain way and they can't because they keep getting sucked into this, like whatever action's going on, stuff like those.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely more interesting than just like good guy fight bad guy, good guy save world. Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah. And that gets so formulaic too. Like you see enough of those stories and you're
It's
like,
yeah,
okay, I know
I'm
what's going on here.
I'm cursed with the ability to be able to predict the way that most movies are gonna happen. And like I think I inherited it from my mom because it's like if we're watching a movie together, like we'll just scream at the TV like, "Oh, come on, we know what's gonna happen." Like we are not allowed in theaters, especially watching horror movies. Like we'll just scream at the screen the whole time. But yeah, so it like I love a good story that doesn't follow a formula that can take me by surprise, and it's usually the stories that revolve around the more human aspects, the human struggles, because it's like it's much more unpredictable. Like
Yeah.
things could be like A, B, or C, whether like as opposed to being like, all right, well, we know this guy's going to defeat the bad guy and this is
Mhm.
going to happen, and maybe there's like, some kind of bittersweet ending or whatever, but it's usually like you can still tell where it's going to go because like the path is already laid out. Like they have to train, they have to do this, then they have to do X, Y, and Z, and then go and fight the villain. But yeah, just following someone's life is just like, it's just a wonderful level of chaos.
Yeah, I agree. Because when you're following, when it's being driven by kind of like human emotion, that can go anywhere. And
Humans are
it's a
so
lot like,
unpredictable. It's
yeah.
great.
Mhm. Like the kind of the external action stuff, you might be able to see where it's going, but if it's coming from somewhere within the character, like their emotions could change on a dime, that could go anywhere.
And I love that too, where it's like, if you have, I keep knocking superheroes, and I'm so sorry, superhero writers, but it's like when you have a superhero, they're not allowed to have like a full range of emotions
Mhm.
because then that damages the IP, then you can't sell toys anymore or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's like they still, despite what's going on, always have to be a good example. But when you have a story that doesn't have like heroes and villains, like your heroes can end up doing some very terrible things just to get by or because like that's what they feel was like the right thing to do. And
Mhm.
it's much more interesting to explore that because people aren't like, so black and white where it's just like, that's bad, I won't do it. That's good, I will do it. It's there everyone's more of this like weird shade of gray. Some are like, darker gray than the others, but it's just like I do like again, people are gonna call me a sadist, I guess, but like I do enjoy watching like a good person make a terrible decision just to
Mhm.
like get by or get something done that they really wanted to get done because it's so human. No one's perfect.
I agree. I think it's more interesting as a reader to read those stories and more fun as a writer too. Like the main character of my comic, Rosette, is it starts off kind of as an anti-hero and she's not a bad person, but she's done some like not great things just because she thought she had to. And that's her whole arc is kind of figuring out what kind of person she wants to be. And
I
that just
reread the first issue as a
oh, you
primer
did?
for this. So yes,
Oh, that's
like I really like that, she's been abandoned a lot of times and she's still trying to figure out like what's going on. She just finds herself working for like a crime boss and it's just like
yeah.
you can tell like it's just her job. She doesn't enjoy it.
Yeah,
And
she's not
I love
invested.
yeah, I love seeing where characters like that end up.
Yeah, I think it's more real. It's more relatable.
Absolutely. Also, on the flip side, I do like seeing, bad characters have a soft spot for something or
Yeah.
someone where it's like it gives a bit of humanization because I think people tend to see bad characters like they just want to see them as monsters with like no redeeming qualities, but it's like, okay, well, like, what if this guy is like a greedy bank robber that kills people, but like, what if he loves his daughter? Like, what do you
Yeah.
make of that? Like, what if he goes home and it's like, who's daddy's little princess? Like, I got you this crown or something. Like,
Yeah.
people don't like to see that for some reason because they don't want to believe that these people have anything that they like that they're attached to. They just want to see sociopaths and monsters. So
Yeah. I think it's kind of like easier to believe that like if someone is going to do these bad things, then it's just because they're a bad person and they're not like me. But that's not real either.
there,
And
yeah,
I love
there's
redemption stories. Like a good redemption arc is awesome.
or even if it's not redemption, I think it's just nice to have a character that's just multifaceted, someone who can go and shoot people and rob a bank, but still come home and like play with his kid on a swing or something.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's like again, that's real. There aren't people who are just like purely evil, like mustache twirling bad guys.
There are, but it's a small percent. Oh, a
Yeah, that's
funny
not, there might be a few.
a funny fact that I learned that I feel like I have to share it now because I listen to a lot of like weird serial killer podcasts and stuff. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it keeps me going for some reason. But I learned that a lot of people become serial killers because like as a child they fell off a swing and they sat up and the swing bonked them in the head and gave them like frontal lobe damage. And it just turned them into
That's so
sociopaths. And
random.
I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I found it so funny because it's just like I was telling this to my best friend and she's just like, okay, but what do I do if I see, a 4-year-old fall off a swing and they get bonked in the head? Like, am I like responsible for reporting it? What if it's my kid? Like, am I gonna raise a killer now? Like, how do we stop this from happening?
That's so random.
Yeah, there's no answer to these questions, but yeah, there like quite a few like serial killers apparently got bonked in the head with a swing specifically. It's such a specific thing to happen.
Yeah. So the lesson is make your kid wear a helmet on the swing.
I'm like, I almost spit out my tea. Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Maybe that's the real answer. It's a preventative measure, like prevent the bonking.
You don't want to become a serial killer.
Wear a helmet, always. Protect that frontal lobe with your life.
That's really funny. Um, so one of the things that you mentioned on the Kickstarter page that I thought was really interesting is how the story breaks away from fantasy molds. Um, how do you kind of go about doing that, I guess, and why is it important?
Uh, it's important, I guess, because I like it. Like I don't like seeing things follow the same template over and over again because there's only so much you can do with it. Like, you see like Tolkien stories and you see like D&D based things and it's always going to be like, all right, well like humans are like this, elves are like that, dwarves are like that, this is like that, and like somehow these races have coexisted for thousands of years and they're still all completely separated, completely segregated, and like no one ever, has a city where everyone's like mixed up apparently, and just I don't know, it just doesn't feel as believable. And again, I want to create a world that feels believable and also just something that felt like interesting and new, and also like giving the element of surprise because I personally like stories where you can't tell what's going to happen. So it's like when you see a character encounter like these little 4 foot tall blue people, you're just like, I have no knowledge of what these people are capable of or what they're like, as opposed to if you put, the character meeting dwarves or whatever, there's sort of like a certain standard that your dwarves have to live up to otherwise. Like,
Mhm.
there's one of two ways you can go. You can go the traditional route and it's like, okay, their dwarves are like this, blah blah blah. But if you break the mold, then people complain. Where it's like, actually, dwarves aren't like that and they would never do that. So I was just like, let me get rid of the traditional races entirely, get rid of like the whole medieval Europe feeling, because I'm kind of over that too.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to create something that didn't feel like another like rehashed medieval Europe. So I came up with like all of these like weird races, interesting architecture, and like that's half the fun of it actually.
Yeah, that's so cool because fantasy is such a broad genre, and when you're dealing with like magic, you can do anything. And so why kind of stick to this one path that's been like so well worn already?
Yeah, it's been done to death, and I don't mind it. Like I still love me some D&D. I
Yeah,
will
same.
still play D&D.
I still love high fantasy, but
But it's fun to be able to get to do something else. Like it is a privilege to be able to do something else and to like just start this world with its own races and hierarchy and history and stuff. Because I do put a lot of history into the world and how it was created and how like the races have interacted with each other. And it's just something that's like if the reader doesn't have 100% knowledge, like they're not going to miss out on anything, but it is fun for them to be able, like those who want to learn, to be able to explore things, especially because I did the field guide that
that's
kind of
cool.
like actually I have it right here handy. It feels kind of like the D&D player's handbook but without all of the rules and all of that because it's just like let me find a good page here. It never opens to like a fun page. But yeah, so you'll have like, the gods and there's like a description of the god and what they're all about and little artwork to support it. And yeah, or like, more extra knowledge about the races in case people want to learn, but if they don't want to learn, like they're not missing out on anything.
And it
It's
looks
like,
really cool.
oh, thank you. I tried. I definitely studied the D&D player's handbook to figure out like how do I get my thing to look like that thing?
That's cool. And yeah, just the I don't know, you can go in so many new directions with that. And it's from a world building perspective too, then you get to start from scratch really and do whatever you want with it and kind of shape the world in a way that's specifically fitting for your specific story.
Yep. I mean, the cool thing is, not that I probably would do it anytime soon, but like if I were to choose to like, make another story within the same
Mhm.
world, it could still feel like a completely different story based
Yeah.
on, where it's set, like what characters it revolves around, and like it's a fun sandbox to play in.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about stories that have that kind of world building, that has so much detail and where the world feels expansive. Then you can have little stories within it, and it's still like um, it satisfies that like kind of wanting more from this story, even if it's a different story, because it has kind of a similar feel, and you can go in these similar directions with it, and it's always fun when you can kind of have that expansive world to play around in.
It is very fun. And also just thinking about like, adding on like bits and pieces more onto like the myths and the lore of like what happened in the past. Like I have the option to do that. Like there's so many things that can be done with this world.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool. Um, and another thing on the Kickstarter page that you mentioned was that you wanted to have a story where queerness isn't the character, a story where the characters are queer, but that's it's not kind of their only character trait. Um, so I guess tell me a little bit more about that.
I mean, like I'm all for queer representation. I'm somewhere on the queer spectrum myself where it's just like, you know what, I'm into whatever. Like, but it's always disappointing when you see a queer character in fiction where like their entire personality revolves around being queer or like I mean we saw this in the 80s and 90s a lot where there was always like oh the gay man that went around and grabbed other men's asses all the time or the woman or the lesbian who like grabbed other women's boobs and like that was their only personality type.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm so over it. So I wanted to just create queer characters where they're just like, they live their lives and they're queer, but that's not the only thing going on. Like, they have jobs and wants and trauma and stuff. So they're just people and they happen to be
Yeah.
queer.
Yeah. Exactly. Because it's when that is your only character trait, then that is, I mean, that's just falling into a stereotype, and that's the same kind of thing. Just characters who are these caricatures of types of characters.
And it's always like a negative portrayal too when you think about it, where someone's like, "Oh, I'm being progressive. Here's my like character with representation," and you're just like, "No, they're like you made a sex
Not a
offender.
real person. Yeah.
Like this is not good representation. We don't need this in the community. Like stop it."
Good job for trying, but not quite.
Yeah, you weren't really trying, were you?
um, very cool. And yeah, I guess is there anything about this issue in particular that is exciting, or about the story in general, where the story's at?
I mean this whole story arc is interesting, and by story arc I mean what's going to be like issues 6 through 10, because you get to learn more about the world. You get to see kind of like a major shift in the dynamic between Kajat and her mom that was kind of set up at the end of the first arc, which was like issue 5. I can't numbers right now. I don't know. Yeah, at the end of issue 5, you can see that they start to drift apart, and then at like the second chapter starts, and like they're just drifting more and more apart. And it's sad and it's traumatizing and it's scary, but you'll still want to see what happens next. And
Yeah, that's one of the things too that I like is that dynamic between the two of them because Kajad is kind of like wanting to learn more and figure out who she is, and her mom is kind of just wanting to ignore stuff.
yeah, it sucks. Like her mom gets a lot of shit from readers, and it's unfortunate because it's like when you think about it, she clearly married a guy that didn't like her and that she didn't like, and somehow had a kid with him, and like she kind of phoned in the parenting because she didn't really want to deal with it, and then they got banished back to the mortal realm, and she has all this knowledge of the divine that she just can't share with anybody. Because she tries, like she gets drunk and she tries and she just becomes like a social pariah, which is not
Oh,
great. It's like, so yeah, she has nobody to go to, nobody she can talk to. She knows that like answering Kajad's questions will only lead to more problems than solutions, because then like how do you tell your kid that like, oh, people want to kill you because of the way you look?
yeah.
It's not an easy conversation to have, and it's also, once again, it's like a real conversation that people in real life always have to have with their kids, like especially with people of color, where it's just like you're going to be treated differently because of the way you look, but like you never want to tell your kid that. And my parents were in such denial when it was happening to me. They're like, oh no, people aren't really like that, I'm sure you're fine. It's like, no, I'm not fine. Like people are just straight up giving me dirty looks, or like, saying like Allahu Akbar to me. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not even Muslim. I'm not even from the Middle East. And even if I was, I don't deserve that.
Yeah. hmm Yeah, and when that's happening, and like that would be, I would think, confusing for a kid if that's happening and your parents are saying like, no, that's not really how they are. Like, it maybe makes you question, what you're feeling yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and if anything, it just made me distrust my parents' advice. I mean, even back when I was in like elementary school and they're like, don't be friends with these people, I'm just like, you're wrong about a lot of things, aren't you?
You realize that your parents are human.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, now I get it. I get, like, I understand, but also like, it's not necessarily a forgiveness of sorts, but it's just like I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but I get it.
Yeah. Realize that they're fallible, I guess, is the
Yeah, it's like
thing.
you do the best you can with the knowledge you have at the time, is what I like to say, because like I've made a lot of mistakes. I've burned a lot of bridges I shouldn't have burned, but like that's just what I thought I needed to do at the time.
Yeah.
Was I an asshole? Sure. But you learn, and hopefully someday you stop being an asshole.
Yeah. That's the goal.
It is. It's a good goal.
And yeah, that I mean, I think that dynamic plays out between Kadaj and her mom. And if she's suddenly her kid has wings and is exposed to all of this danger, she's trying to do the best that she can do, but then
Yeah, like how do you also, because then capitalism comes into play and she has to work full time, and then she is tired at the end of the day because it's like being a play performer and singing and dancing and stuff, like that's tiring, and then you come home to your kid who has like a billion questions and you're just like, I can't even right now. So yeah, she definitely deserves to be cut some slack. I think also what's interesting about this whole story arc with chapter 2, which is issue 6 through 10, is you see how Kajad's mom and dad met, and
Oh,
you see,
cool.
yeah, you learn the circumstances under how they met, and then kind of get a better understanding of what's going on. And it's just a fun train wreck to look at, I guess. And then you wonder what's going to happen to the train after that, and after that.
Yeah. And that's a good story if you keep wondering what happens after the next train wreck.
Yeah, you're just like, oh my God, this train. No, the next wreck can't possibly be that bad, can it? And you're just like, oh my God, no, it is. What is wrong with these trains?
Um, so is there anything about the campaign in particular that you wanted to mention? I know you've got some exciting variants that are exclusive to Kickstarter.
Yeah, so everything but the standard cover, meaning the Astral Romance cover and the Weeping Bride cover, those are only available for the campaign because I do very small runs of them because I don't like having lots of books sitting around my house. Because I have like I don't have storage space. I can't print like, 1,000 books and just set on them. So basically for the variants, I just print enough to fulfill the campaign and that's it. So, and it's funny because after the campaigns or like in future campaigns, they'll be like, "Oh, do you have the variant from Sacrimony 6?" I'm like, "No. No, I don't. You should have gotten it when you had the chance. I'm not gonna like hold this for you. I can't hold it for you."
Don't miss your opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like, yeah, don't miss out. Once it's gone forever. So if anybody wants those variants, even the digital variant, it's only available for this campaign.
Nice. Yeah, I'm the same. I do not have space for lots of comics. I have like a couple plastic bins in my office that are mostly filled with issues 1 and 2, but I really don't. I'm running out of space to keep them.
Oh no.
It's an issue.
Oh my God. Try having 400 184-page trade paperbacks just like littered around your
Wow.
room. Like I found clever places to put them. There's like a bunch of them like, under my drawing table and I use it as like a footrest because I'm just like, all right, it's already here. Let me just stretch my
Use
feet or
that of it.
just finding places to tuck all of these boxes. Like it's a lot. People don't understand. Like, oh well, if you order 1,000 books, you can get a discount. Like, bro,
We're
where am I
not
gonna?
getting 1,000
I'm gonna sleep on 1,000 books. Like, that's not very comfy. Just throw out my mattress and sleep on books.
Just get rid of
Ridiculous.
all your furniture and just fill the house with books. You'll be good.
You just make book furniture at that point. Just stack boxes, put couch cushions on top of them. It's like, welcome to my abode. Yeah, it's mostly cardboard. And then the cats start scratching it, and it's a whole thing.
Whatever works.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I do small quantities. Even with my standard covers, I kind of estimate how much I'll need to fulfill up until the trade paperback comes out, and then like, so once the trade paperback comes out, like all of the back issues are just like obsolete. Don't have them anymore because I can't. I can't. And then yeah, sometimes I will get people who are like, "Oh, do you still have the single issues of 1 through 5?" No, no, I don't. Sorry. Shut out of luck. I can't print just one book of each for you. I'm sorry.
That would be nice. But
Yeah, it's too much because everywhere it has like, oh, you have to print a minimum of 50. And like, I don't need 50 books.
it is a problem.
It is. I mean, that's the unfortunate side of manufacturing, unless, someone wants to get their own printer to print comics, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, that is a
Okay.
learning curve I do not have time for.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, so I'll just leave it to the professionals.
Exactly. Um, One other thing that you mentioned on the Kickstarter page, you describe your art style as pretty, which
I hope it is.
I think it's really pretty. I think that is
Thank
a
you.
really good word. Um, and I feel like the feel of it, the mood fits the story so well. So how did you kind of, I guess, get to that particular story or style for the story?
A lot of practice behind the scenes. I can actually draw in quite a few different drawing styles. Like if you've seen The Misadventures of Buddy and Friend, it looks
Yeah,
completely
totally
different
different.
from Sacrimony. So it's mostly just figuring out like how I want things to look and then trying to get my hands to do the things that my brain wants it to do. But yeah, just practicing with different styles of faces, different ways to draw like hair and clothing, because there's so many ways you can do it and there's so many ways it can go wrong.
Yeah.
Like my friend Jeremiah, when he was trying to learn to draw, he's just like, I don't there's just so many things that can go wrong. Like I don't understand this.
I
And
know that's how I feel too. It's very impressive to me.
thank you. I agree because like I mean I've been drawing for like 34 years or something, and it's just like there are still days where I just feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Or
Mhm.
that I get scared by like having a blank page in front of me and I'm like, What do I do with this? Like I don't even know. But yeah, I mean,
Never really get, even with writing too. I feel like you never totally get over that feeling. Like,
oh my God, yeah, writing is also like horrifying where you're just like, I have this idea and you're staring at the blank page and you're just like, where do I start? And you know that whatever you type out at the moment is going to be completely wrong and like, not what you wanted it to be or where you want it to go. And you're just like, brain, I just want you to get to the good actual usable part. But no, you have to get like all of the terrible ideas out of the way first.
yeah, it does work that way. You have to get all of the like just awful stuff out of the way, like on the page, and
Yep.
then you can just clear it away and get to the good stuff. But it's like I wish you could just put the good stuff down perfectly the first time. But
If only, because
yeah,
yeah, I'll have moments where I'm just typing at and I'm just like, all right, this is happening, and then it's like, wait, no, that character would never do that. What am I talking about? Delete everything, start over.
yeah, delete, delete, delete.
Delete, throw away, just get new computer, burn old computer, start over.
But yeah. So is there anything else about the comic or the campaign that you wanted to mention?
I have my digital catch-up bundle really like affordably priced, so I want people to read it. Digital doesn't cost any overhead to distribute, so basically you can get issues 1 through 7 plus the field guide for $19, which like mathematically speaking, that's like 300 pages of like comic and story related things
That's
because
awesome.
the trade paperback is 184 pages, then issue 6 is 30 pages, then issue 7 is 30 pages, and the field guide is 50 pages. So like you're getting a lot of stuff for $19. And I think like going forward with my campaigns, I'm gonna keep the ketchup bundle at like that specific price because people seem to be going for it because it's reasonable. They get to, catch up on the story like affordably.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you're on the fence about, catching up to the story, it's just $19.
Very cool. And the campaign goes through Friday night.
Yep, Friday night at 11:59 p.m. Because I don't know why I picked that time. I usually end up picking that time for some reason, just because it's what I've always done.
I did
There's,
that with my last campaigns too. They both ended at 11:59. I don't know. I feel like I want to have like psychologically. I feel like okay, I get that full day to get pledges in. Then I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but it feels like the logical thing to do.
it does. I feel like maybe it's superstition or something, but I do get a lot of like last minute pledges
Yeah,
when I have it run through a full day, as opposed to like I feel like if I cut it off at let's say like 7 p.m., like people are just coming home and the campaign is
yeah,
over, and then they're like, oh well, oh gosh darn it, I missed it. Too bad.
yeah.
So you give that extra leeway until midnight for people to remember to back it, because it's hard to remember to back things sometimes. I admit, like there are times where I've been meaning to back stuff from friends, and I'm like, okay, I don't have the money now. Let me like just follow it or whatever, and then you get the reminder where it's like there's 8 hours left. I'm like, oh shit, oh shit.
Yeah, same. I feel like that happens all the time.
The reminders are handy. I do appreciate them.
Yeah, they are handy. And I feel like I see people do their little like on Instagram or whatever, little celebrations as the campaign ends. And I'm like, oh, I should end earlier in the evening so I can do that because I'm not going to stay up till midnight to do that. But also, it just I want to have those last few hours. So,
Yeah, I also I don't know if it's weird superstition or what, but I don't even check the campaign in like the last few hours. Like I'm such an old person in the body of a middle-aged person where it's just like I wanna like when it's like 10:30, I'm getting ready to go to sleep already. Like that's it.
same.
Computer off, nothing's going on, and like maybe I'll wake up in the morning and see a few extra backers and it'll feel like Christmas. It'll be like a good surprise.
I do that exact same thing. Like I don't know where it's at when it ends until I wake up the next morning.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it
fun.
works. It's a nice surprise.
It is. Um, well, yeah, so it goes through Friday night, and I'll be sure to include the link to the campaign in the notes. And yeah, if you haven't backed it yet, check it out. Definitely recommend it.
3 days left.
3 days left. Well,
Yes.
I'll
And then I'm
probably
free.
post this tomorrow, so 2 days
Oh, 2 days left.
left. But yeah, it was great chatting with you.
Great chatting with you, and I guess we will speak next week, I think.
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
coming on your show.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
You too. That'll be fun.